You know that feeling, that exact moment when something happens inside a wrestling arena that makes 70,000 people lose their absolute minds all at once? That collective gasp, that eruption, that split second where time seems to freeze and nobody can believe what they just witnessed with their own two eyes? Well, if you weren't watching Elimination Chamber this past weekend, I need you to sit down, because what I'm about to tell you is going to shake you to your core. And if you were watching, you already know. You already felt it. And you came here because you need somebody to scream about it with you. Welcome back to Wrestling Impact. I'm your host, and tonight we talk about the moment that just rewrote women's wrestling history forever. Let's set the scene, because this story doesn't start inside the chamber. No. This story starts months ago, in the shadows of a comeback nobody saw coming. Not the bookers, not the analysts, not the internet wrestling community that spends 24 hours a day convincing themselves they know everything. Nobody saw this coming. A.J. Lee. Just let that name breathe for a second. A.J. Lee, the woman who redefined what it meant to be a women's champion during an era when women were barely given 5 minutes on Monday Night Raw. The woman who held gold with a ferocity that made veterans uncomfortable and veterans respect her in the same breath. The woman who walked away from this business on her own terms, head held high, legacy untouchable. She left, and the wrestling world moved on as it always does, but it never quite forgot her. How could it? You don't forget a force of nature just because the storm passed. And then, she came back. Not with fireworks. Not with a massive WrestleMania return segment dripping in nostalgia. No. A.J. Lee came back quietly, purposefully, like she had unfinished business that she'd been sitting on for years. There was something different about her this time, a stillness behind those eyes that was almost unsettling. Like a chess grandmaster who already knows how the game ends before the first piece moves. She wasn't here for a pop. She wasn't here for a feel-good moment. She was here to take something. And Becky Lynch? Becky Lynch had built an empire in the time AJ was gone. Let's give credit where credit is absolutely due, because Becky Lynch is not a paper champion. She is the blueprint. She is the standard. She is the woman who fought tooth and nail and clawed her way from undercard obscurity to becoming the most recognized women's wrestler on the planet. The man. The champ. The one who proved that when you give women's wrestling time, when you give it storytelling, when you give it stakes, the audience will follow. The audience will invest. And Becky had been carrying the Women's Intercontinental Championship like it was a second heartbeat. Every title defense was a statement. Every promo was a masterclass. She wasn't just defending a belt, she was defending a philosophy. The idea that this new era of women's wrestling was here to stay and nobody was taking it backwards. So when AJ Lee stepped back into the picture and started orbiting Becky's world, the wrestling community had mixed feelings. Some people were nervous. They'd seen too many beloved legends return only to muddy their legacies chasing one more run. They didn't want that for AJ. They wanted her legacy preserved in amber, perfect, pristine, untouched. Others were electric. They were losing their minds on every platform, making video edits, writing dissertations in comment sections, counting down days like it was Christmas morning. And then there was a third group, and this is the group that ended up being right, who looked at the way AJ was carrying herself and said quietly, she's going to win that championship. Fast forward to the weeks leading into Elimination Chamber. The promos between these two women were something out of a fever dream. Becky Lynch, mic in hand, doing what Becky Lynch does, dissecting her opponent with surgical precision wrapped inside sharp-tongued humor. She called AJ a nostalgia act. She said the wrestling world AJ remembered doesn't exist anymore. That the bar has been raised so high that coming back after years away and expecting to just slot in at the top was pure delusion dressed up in a punk rock aesthetic. And AJ? AJ smiled. That smile. If you followed AJ Lee's career at all, you know that smile is terrifying. It's the smile of someone who isn't threatened, not because they're overconfident, but because they've already done the math and they like the answer. Her response was calm. Almost eerily calm. She told Becky that everything Becky built, every inch of this women's revolution, every barrier broken, every record shattered, she respected it completely. And then she said, but respect doesn't mean I won't take what I came here for. The arena went silent for just a beat. And then the roof came off. That's the art of professional wrestling at its finest, people. That's the storytelling that turns casual fans into obsessed ones. That's why we're all here. Now let's talk about Elimination Chamber itself, because the match delivered in ways that I genuinely didn't think were possible. The build-up had been extraordinary, but there's always that part of your brain that whispers, What if it doesn't live up to the hype? What if the expectation is just too massive? What if one of them gets injured, or the crowd is flat, or the chemistry just isn't there on the night? None of that happened. None of it. From the moment Becky Lynch's entrance hit, and Becky always comes out like she owns the building, because she does, the crowd was already buzzing. The energy inside that arena was thick enough to cut with a blade. People on their feet. Signs everywhere. A mixture of pro-Becky devotion and a quiet, nervous excitement for what AJ might do. And then AJ's music hit. I'm not going to overstate this, no, actually, I'm going to overstate it exactly the right amount, because that pop was incredible. The nostalgia mixed with genuine anticipation created this layered roar from the crowd that you just don't hear very often. This wasn't just people happy to see someone from the past. This was people who believed, who felt in their gut that something historic was about to happen. The two women stood across the ring from each other, and I want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, don't actually close your eyes because you're watching this video, but you know what I mean, and just picture it. Becky Lynch, the reigning champion, the standard setter, the woman who changed everything. AJ Lee, the returning legend, the original force, the one with nothing to prove and everything to gain. The referee holds up the Women's Intercontinental Championship one final time before this match changes its destination forever. The bell rings. The opening sequence is chess. Pure chess. Neither woman comes out swinging recklessly because both of them are too smart for that. They're feeling each other out, trading holds, testing responses, reading body language. Becky tries to establish her ground game early. She knows AJ's speed is a problem, so she wants to slow it down, keep it physical, keep it grounded. AJ keeps slipping free, keeps creating distance, keeps smiling that smile. About 4 minutes in, Becky catches AJ with a hard forearm that snaps the crowd out of their chess-watching headspace and into pure adrenaline mode. This is where Becky thrives. She's at her best when she's aggressive, when she's fighting on instinct mixed with technical precision. She goes on a run. Hard shots in the corner. An exploder suplex that folds AJ in half. A close nearfall that made half the arena collectively grab the person next to them. But AJ kicks out. And when AJ sits up from that nearfall and looks at Becky with those eyes, that's when you knew this wasn't going to be quick. The match escalates in the most beautiful way. AJ starts targeting Becky's arm, and once she locks onto something, she is relentless. The Black Widow is always lurking in the shadows of everything AJ does. Every sequence is a thread she's pulling that eventually could lead to that submission hold, and Becky knows it. You can see it in her offense. She's a little more protective of her arm position than usual. A little more conscious. That psychology. That layered, brilliant psychology is what separates a great match from a legendary one. The middle section of this match has a stretch, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, where these two women are pushing each other to absolute limits. Counters into counters into counters. AJ reverses a manhandle slam attempt into an arm drag. Becky catches a crossbody attempt and rolls through. There's a moment where Becky has AJ trapped in a modified armbar on the mat, cranking back, and AJ is screaming and the crowd is split right down the middle, half chanting for Becky, half chanting for AJ, and the noise inside that building is absolutely overwhelming. AJ reaches the ropes. The crowd exhales. And then comes the moment. Becky sets up for the Manhandle Slam, her signature, her exclamation point, the move that has ended countless championship matches. She hoists AJ up and you can see it in her face. This is it, this is how it ends. The crowd holds its breath. AJ Lee reverses midair. I don't know how to properly describe what happens in that split second other than to say that AJ's body seems to defy logic entirely. She twists, she spins, she wraps, and suddenly Becky Lynch is locked into the Black Widow in the center of the ring with nowhere to go. The arena erupts. Not a pop. An eruption. Like the building itself can't contain the sound. Becky fights. She fights. Because Becky Lynch does not quit. It's physically not in her nature. She drags herself toward the ropes with AJ cinched on tight, and you're watching this woman will herself across the canvas through sheer force of personality, and for a moment, just a moment, you think she's going to make it. She doesn't make it. Becky Lynch taps out. AJ Lee is the new Women's Intercontinental Champion. The referee calls for the bell and the sound that follows is indescribable. 70-something thousand people, I'm being told. We don't have the exact number, but it doesn't matter because it might as well have been the entire world absolutely losing their minds. AJ Lee collapses in the ring, the belt placed in her hands, and she looks at it for a long moment. Just holds it. Just breathes. And then she cries. I don't care how long you've been a wrestling fan or how emotionally guarded you think you are, you saw those tears and something moved inside your chest. Because this woman walked away from this business. She lived a full life outside these ropes. She could have stayed gone. The legacy was already written. And she came back anyway, and she worked, and she grinded, and she believed in right here, right now. It paid off in the most stunning fashion. Becky Lynch is on her knees in the corner, catching her breath, and she watches AJ celebrate. And there's a moment, just a brief moment, that the cameras catch where Becky nods. Just once. A small, almost private acknowledgement from one great to another. It doesn't erase the loss. It doesn't soften the blow. But it says something about the character of both of these women that transcends wins and losses. That moment right there is why professional wrestling, at its absolute best, is storytelling that no other form of entertainment can replicate. Now look, the questions are already flying. What does this mean for Becky Lynch's next chapter? Where does the women's Intercontinental title picture go from here? Are we looking at a rematch down the road? Because if that first match did that, a rematch with both women fully prepared and personally motivated could be something that we're talking about for decades. And what does this mean for AJ Lee as champion going forward? Who steps up? Who is the next challenger? Because you better believe the entire women's locker room watched that match, and every single one of them is doing math right now about how they fit into this title picture. The Women's Intercontinental Championship just became the most fascinating belt in the entire business, and AJ Lee just became the story that wrestling fans are going to be talking about for months. Here's the thing that gets me most about all of this. AJ Lee didn't have to come back. She chose to. And she chose to come back and immediately chase the biggest challenge available to her. She didn't ask for an easy path. She didn't ask for the feel-good nostalgia booking where a returning legend beats a series of enhancement talents before getting a title shot. She walked straight into the lion's den and faced the absolute best the women's division had to offer. And she won. That's not just a wrestling story. That's a life story. That's what it looks like when someone operates from a place of genuine belief in themselves, not arrogance, not entitlement, but belief. Quiet, unshakable, tested belief. And here we are. Here we all are, wrestling fans, gathered together in this strange and wonderful community we've built, processing something that we're going to remember. Something that we're going to bring up in wrestling conversations for years to come. Where were you when AJ Lee won the Women's Intercontinental Championship? What were you doing the night everything changed at Elimination Chamber? I was here. Watching. Feeling every second of it just like you were. And all I can tell you is that this is exactly why we never walk away from this sport. Because just when you think you've seen it all, just when you start to wonder if anything can surprise you anymore,